continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Talks between Narada and King Puranjana. This is Canto 4, Chapter 29, Text 47. So, Narada Muni has, in previous chapters, related an allegory about the condition of a living entity who identifies with the material energy, material body, material existence. He gave an allegory, a story, to illustrate the situation. And King Bhahisman, or Puranjana, is asking for further clarification because there was a lot of symbolism and hidden meanings because it was a story. And so he's saying he didn't understand everything about it, and he's asking Narada for further clarification. So that's what this section is. So, text 47. My dear King Bhahisman, you should never, out of ignorance, take to the Vedic rituals or to fruitive activity, which may be pleasing to hear about, or which may appear to be the goal of self-interest. You should never take these to be the ultimate goal of life. Materialistic studies are the glare of Maya only, for they are an obstacle to spiritual progress. The real purpose of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. Ignorant of the real purpose of life, people take to either gross materialistic activities or ritualistic activities. And King Bhahisman is herein requested not to be attached to such activities. Those who are less intelligent accept the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies as all in all. They do not know that the purpose of the Vedas is to understand one's own home, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead lives. Not being interested in their real home, they're illusioned and search for other homes. In the spiritual world, there are many Vaikuntha planets. The topmost planet is Krishnaloka, Goloka Vrindavan. Despite the so-called advancement of civilization, there is no information of the Vaikuntha Lokas, the spiritual planets. All the planets in the material world are temporary creations, even though some of them are quite opulent. Abrama Bhuvanaloka Punarvittano Juna Mamupecha Tukanteya Punarjanma Navidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. The one who attains to my abode, the son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Even if one goes to the highest planetary system within the universe, he still has to return after the effects of pious activities are finished. One should be interested in information about the spiritual Vaikuntha planets, and in particular the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan, and should learn the art of going there by the simple method of devotional service. Beginning with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. Hearing, chanting about Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu. This is also confirmed in Bhagavatam. One can go to the supreme planet, Paramvajet, simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. This is especially meant for the people of this age, Kaler Dosha Nide. It is the special advantage of this age that simply by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, one can become purified of all material contamination, return home, back to Godhead. There's no doubt about this. (49) My dear king, the entire world is covered with the sharp points of kusha grass. And on the strength of this, you have become proud because you have killed various types of animals and sacrifices. Because of your foolishness, you do not know that devotional service is the only way one can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You cannot understand this fact. Your only activities should be those that can please the Personality of Godhead. Our education should be such that we can become elevated to Krishna consciousness. Anything that is done which does not lead to Krishna consciousness is a sinful activity. Any education that does not lead one to understand Krishna is false education. Text 50. Sri Hari, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the supersoul and guide of all living entities who have accepted material bodies within this world. He is the supreme controller of all material activities in material nature. He is also our best friend, and everyone should take shelter at his lotus feet. Doing so, one's life will be auspicious. It is said, Bhagavad Gita 18:61, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridayarjuna tishtati. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna. The living entity is within the body, and the Supersoul, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is also there. He's called Antaryami and Chechiguru. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, he is controlling everything. Sarvasya chaham ridi sanivisto mataksmitya jnanamapanam cha. I'm seated in everyone's heart. From me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Everything is being directed by the Supersoul within the body. Therefore, the better part of valor is to take his direction and be happy. To take his direction, one needs to be a devotee, and this is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Although the Supersoul is in everyone's heart, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridayarjuna tishtati, he talks only to the pure devotees who constantly engage in his service. In Chaitanya Bhagavat it is said, one who has fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna is to be understood as having the best education and as having studied all the Vedas. And again in Chaitanya Bhagavat, the perfect result of an education is the fixing of one's mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Conquering the world by means of material education is not desirable. If one engages himself in devotional service, his education is perfected. The purpose of education is to understand Krishna and his devotional service. If one does not do so, then education is false. Being cultured, educated, very active, and religious means developing natural love for Krishna. Everyone has dormant love for Krishna, and by culture and education that has to be awakened. That is the purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement. (51) One who is engaged in devotional service has not the least fear in material existence. This is because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supersoul and friend of everyone. One who knows this secret is actually educated, and one thus educated can become the spiritual master of the world. One who is an actually bona fide spiritual master, representative of Krishna, is non-different from Krishna. The spiritual master is described in every scripture as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual master is accepted as identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he's the most confidential servant of the Lord. The purport is that both the Supersoul and the individual soul are very dear to everyone. Everyone loves himself, and when he becomes more advanced, he loves the Supersoul also. A person who is self-realized does not recommend the worship of anyone but the Supersoul. He knows that to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead is easier than to worship various demigods under the influence of lust and the desire for material enjoyment. The devotee is therefore always engaged in the loving devotional service of the Lord. Such a person is a true guru. In Padma Purana it is said, Satkarma nipuno vipro mantra tantra visarada evaishnavo gururna shat vaishnavasva pacha guru. Even if a Brahmin is very learned in Vedic scriptures and knows the 6 occupational duties of a Brahmin, he cannot become a guru or spiritual master unless he is a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, if one is born in a family of dog-eaters, but is a pure devotee of the Lord, he can become a spiritual master. The conclusion is that one cannot become a spiritual master unless he is a pure devotee of the Lord. One who is a spiritual master, in accordance with the above descriptions of devotional service, is to be understood as the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally present. According to the words mentioned here, Guru Hari, consulting a bona fide spiritual master means consulting the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally. One should therefore take shelter of such a bona fide spiritual master. Success in life means accepting a spiritual master who knows Krishna as the only supreme beloved personality. One should worship such a confidential devotee of the Lord. The great Saint Narada continued, O great personality, I have replied properly about all that you have asked me. Now, hear another narration that is accepted by saintly persons and is very confidential. Narada Muni is personally acting as the spiritual master of King Bhagavatam. It was Narada Muni's intention that, through his instructions, the king would immediately give up all engagement in fruitive activity and take to devotional service. However, although the king understood everything, he was still not prepared to give up his engagements. As the following verses will show, the king was contemplating sending for his sons, who were away from home executing austerities and penances. After their return, he would entrust his kingdom to them and then leave home. This is the position of most people. They accept a bona fide spiritual master and listen to him. But when the spiritual master indicates that they should leave home and fully engage in devotional service, they hesitate. The duty of the spiritual master is to instruct the disciple as long as he does not come to the understanding that this materialistic way of life, fruitive activity, is not at all beneficial. Actually, one should take to devotional service from the beginning of life, as Prahlad Maharaj advised. According to all the instructions of the Vedas, we can understand that unless one takes to Krishna consciousness and devotional service, he is simply wasting his time engaging in the fruitive activities of material existence. Narada Muni therefore decided to relate another allegory to the king, so that he might be induced to give up family life within material existence. 53. My dear king, please search out that deer who is engaged in eating grass in a very nice flower garden along with his wife. That deer is very much attached to his business, and he is enjoying the sweet singing of the bumblebees in his garden. Just try to understand his position. He is unaware that before him is a tiger, which is accustomed to living at the cost of another's flesh. Behind the deer is a hunter who is threatening to pierce him with sharp arrows. Thus, the deer's death is imminent. All living entities, especially human beings, think themselves very happy in the midst of families, as if living in a flower garden and hearing the sweet humming of bees. Everyone is centered about his wife, who is the beauty of family life. The bumblebee's humming may be compared to the talk of the children. The human being, just like the deer, enjoys his family life without knowing that before him is the factor of time, which is represented by the tiger. The fruitive activities of a living entity simply create another dangerous position and oblige him to accept different types of body. For a deer to run after a mirage of water in the desert is not unusual. Deer is also very fond of sex. The conclusion is that one who lives like a deer will be killed in due course of time. Vedic literatures therefore advise that we should understand our constitutional position and take to devotional service before death comes. After many births, we have attained the human form. Therefore, before death comes, we should engage ourselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. That is the fulfillment of life. My dear king, woman, who is very attractive in the beginning, but in the end very disturbing, is exactly like the flower, which, attractive in the beginning and detestable at the end. With woman, the living entity is entangled with lusty desires, and he enjoys sex, just as one enjoys the aroma of a flower. He thus enjoys a life of sense gratification, from his tongue to his genitals. And in this way, the living entity considers himself very happy in family life. United with his wife, he always remains absorbed in such thoughts. He feels great pleasure in hearing the talks of his wife and children, which are like the sweet humming of bumblebees that collect honey from flower to flower. He forgets that before him is time, which is taking away his lifespan with the passing of day and night. He does not see the gradual diminishing of his life, nor does he care about the superintendent of death, who is trying to kill him from behind. Just try to understand this. You are in a precarious position and are threatened from all sides. Krishna, my dear king, just try to understand the allegorical position of the deer. Be fully conscious of yourself. Give up the pleasure of hearing about promotion to heavenly planets by fruitive activity. Give up household life, which is full of sex, as well as stories about such things, and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the mercy of the liberated souls. In this way, please give up your attraction for material existence. Narottam Das Thakur has written a song, translated, fruitive activities, mental speculation, are simply cups of poison. Whoever drinks of them, thinking them to be nectar, must struggle very hard life after life in different types of bodies. Such a person eats all kinds of nonsense, becomes condemned by his activities of so-called sense enjoyment. Rupa Goswami explains the meaning of renunciation in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. Sanskrit, Anya Shaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjate Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagyam Uchate. One should not be attached to material opulence, but material opulence may be accepted in the Krishna consciousness movement to facilitate propagation of the movement. In other words, material opulence may be accepted as yukta vairagya, that is, for renunciation. 56. The king replied, my dear Brahmin, whatever you have said, I have heard with great attention, and considering all of it, have come to the conclusion that the acharyas, teachers, who engaged me in fruitive activities, did not know this confidential knowledge. If they were aware of it, why did they not explain it to me? Actually, the so-called teachers or leaders of material society do not really know the goal of life. The real goal of life is to attain devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The king, therefore, decided to reject the so-called priestly orders that simply engage their followers in the ritualistic ceremonies without giving effective instructions about the goal of life. The Goswamis from the very beginning differed from the priestly class that was engaged in ritualistic ceremonies. Indeed, Srila Sanatana Goswami compiled his Hari Bhakti Vilas for the guidance of the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas not caring for the lifeless activities of the priestly classes, take to full Krishna consciousness and become perfect in this very life. That is described in the previous verse as Paramahamsa Saranam, taking shelter of the Paramahamsa, the liberated soul, and becoming successful in this life. 57. My dear Brahmin, there are contradictions between your instructions and those of my spiritual teachers who engaged me in fruitive activities. I now can understand the distinction between devotional service, knowledge, and renunciation. I had some doubts about them, but you have now very kindly dissipated all these doubts. I can now understand how even the great sages are bewildered by the real purpose of life. Of course, there is no question of sense gratification. When the Brahmins, the priests, have been against this Krishna consciousness movement since it began with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started this movement, the priestly class lodged complaints to the Qazi, the magistrate of the Mohammedan government. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to lead a civil disobedience movement against the propaganda of the so-called followers of Vedic principles. These people are described as karma jata smartas, which indicates that they are priests engaged in ritualistic ceremonies. It's here stated that such people become bewildered. To save oneself from the hands of these karma jata smartas, one should strictly follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarvadaman parityaja mamekam saranam praja aham tvam sarvapabhebhyo mokshayishami matsuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. Bhagavad Gita 1866. The results of whatever a living entity does in this life are enjoyed in the next life. A person generally does not know how one body is linked with another body. How is it possible that one suffers or enjoys the results of activities in this body in yet another body in the next life? This is a question the king wants Narada Muni to answer. How may one have a human body in this life and not have a human body in the next? Even great philosophers and scientists cannot account for the transferal of karma from one body to another. As we experience, every individual soul has an individual body, and one person's activities, or one body's activities, are not enjoyed or suffered by another body or another person. The question is how the activities of one body are suffered or enjoyed in the next. The expert knowers of the Vedic conclusions say that one enjoys or suffers the results of his past activities. But practically it is seen that the body that performed the work in the last birth is already lost. So how is it possible to enjoy or suffer the reactions of that work in a different body? They have no idea how the subtle body carries the results of the present body's actions down to the next gross body. The present body may be finished grossly, but the subtle body is not finished. It carries the soul to the next body. Actually, the gross body is dependent on the subtle body. Therefore, the next gross body must suffer and enjoy according to the subtle body. The soul is carried by the subtle body continuously until liberated from gross material bondage. I'll take a little break here.